Hello and welcome to the Think Sports podcast. Today, our guest is Shreyas. This is actually his second time on the podcast. He's been here before talking about Formula One and the Eiffel Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago. But Shreyas today is going to talk to us about his experiences in sports management. He went to Loughborough University to study sports management, and it'll be a nice conversation because Arjun, who is our co-host, also went to the UK. He went to the University of Stirling to study sports management. So you guys can have like a nice discussion about your experiences. Um, so Arjun, I'll pass it over to you to kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Welcome, Shreyas. Nice to have you back.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk to people who have also gone abroad to do a similar course that I have done because I get to understand what they were thinking when they were going through the process and selecting, because we both know that the sports industry in India is growing, but there aren't as many opportunities to study in India just yet. So I'm interested in knowing what motivated you to take up sports management as a career. Is this something you always wanted to do, or is this something that you stumbled upon whilst you were working or playing? How do you get interested into this?
It's been an age-old thing. I think since I was born, maybe 2 or 3 years into my life, I've always been fascinated by sports that involve a ball. I was initially motivated by cricket. Had the dream of playing for India one day when I was young, like a lot of us do. Um, and then, of course, transition to other sports like football and Formula One, and even till date, I follow so many sports that I can, call myself like a massive sports fan across all disciplines and not just one or two. But I think even when I was like 10 or 11 and, we're getting to like the end of school, getting to 10th grade where you have to write your boards, of course, and choose your stream. And the 11th and 12th is the more important time, of course. But even before that, a lot of people had come around because at that point in time, sports management was like a novel course, you could call it. It wasn't the mainstream thing, and it's still not mainstream, but it is more widely accepted today compared to back then. So that time people were saying, you have so much of a passion for sports and you have a passion for business and economics. Why can't you morph that into sports management? So I think that's where the seed was laid, I guess, in my head. Then eventually, after doing my bachelor's, I'd go on to do a sports management and master's, and preferably abroad, right? Because most of the sports that I follow are sports that are based in Europe or the Americas. So might as well do something that gives me that exposure, that kind of closeness to the sport itself, and gives me opportunities to kind of think about what I can do within that sport in that region. So I think that's where the interest came from, and it was always there. So that was the natural progression to doing a master's in sports management.
That makes sense. Yeah, so that's interesting because you mentioned that it's quite similar to what happened with me, although there was one significant event because when I was in my undergraduate college, I was lucky enough to be the sports secretary, which helped me organize a lot of events, which got me interested in that side of things off field, not just on field, because we always want to play and then we think, okay, this is the end, I can't do it anymore. But that's something which the perception is changing. People understand they can make a career in the sports industry. They don't just have to be athletes. So which is pretty good. Shall I track back to the process which led you to get into Loughborough, your application process, exams that you took, and what just guide us through that stage of your life and what you did leading up to getting to Loughborough?
So initially, I'd done a bachelor's. I was in my third year, entering my third year, which was 2018. 2018-19 was my final year in economics. And I mean, at the start of that, I was shortlisting for universities, and Loughborough was the main one that I wanted to get into. And so I did apply to a few other UK universities. So it kind of made me streamline the application process because most of them are quite similar. And then I did take the GRE in November of that year, November 2018. It wasn't required per se for the Loughborough application, but I took it up because I was also interested in a few US universities which do require the GRE. So that was the only real exam I took in the lead up. I didn't have to take an IELTS or a TOEFL because the UK recognizes my CBSE English as good enough. So that was a bonus. So I applied in February of 2019 and got in like in March. So it was almost like it was similar to the SSC process in a way. I just had to write one exam, which wasn't even required, submit my statement of purpose along with all my requisite documents, and that was about it for the process, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I was going through the application process, I was looking at countries like Australia, even the States and so on, but they had different requirements. So if I wanted to go to the States, I required 16 years of education, which unfortunately, if I were in India, it's not really possible because most of our undergraduate programs are 3 years. Then, I mean, you have 12 plus 3, so we're always unlucky that way. Australia also had most of their courses were 2-year master's programs instead of one. So did you ever think about these things, whether 1 year would be shorter or faster? Did these ever things come up in your decision-making process?
Not about the duration. I'd say the duration was the problem as long as the course was good. I think that's where I made a small mistake in the sense that while looking through the US courses, you just mentioned, right, that the 16 years requirement that we did not pass makes it harder to get into the US universities. But their courses are far more in depth because of the fact that they're 2-year courses. You can't deny that. After looking back, after my 1-year degree, I can say that I would have preferred another year to kind of learn a bit more about the analytical side, because that's something that is far more prevalent in the United States than anywhere else in the world in terms of sports opportunities. So I think that's one thing to consider when you're going for a 1 or 2-year course. But apart from that, it wasn't about how quickly can I get out of the degree. But yeah, it was just about that, what the course entailed, what it, did it give you an internship opportunity probably the second year, or what does it entail for you after you graduated and stuff like that.
So so you talked about how the US has a more analytical approach, especially it helps that they have a 2-year degree. So I'm trying to do research to get into college right now for everyone listening. I'm trying to do sports management, follow in Shreyas and Arjun's footsteps. But the thing I find is when I'm making these decisions, and I think this is something for most people would think of, when you're thinking of the Americas to do your master's, we get that it's 2 years, but I want you to talk about what you think of, and I know for Shreyas, this isn't a problem for everyone listening. Shreyas has an American passport, so he doesn't need a work permit in the US. But I want you to talk about visas, because that's something that's important when you're making these decisions, whether or not to go to the US to do a 2-year degree that would probably be a bit more analytical, or to go to the UK to a 1-year degree, and then see whether you get a visa from there. So I want to hear your perspectives on that, on UK versus US versus Australia's, where Deakin and like they have some really good colleges for sports management. So I want you guys to talk about visas.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite fascinating because I have an American passport, so I don't need a visa in the US. But Rick, you yourself have a UK waiver to, you don't need a visa to work. So I think that's a big advantage for anyone applying if you don't need a visa to work, I guess. Personally, the problem I've faced upon graduation, even before that, is that companies just don't want to take you in the UK if you don't have a work permit. Because it's just not, it doesn't make sense for them to hire a fresher from abroad who they have to pay for, right? It doesn't make sense. But on the flip side, I look at it and I don't think it should deter you from kind of pursuing opportunities in the countries you want. Because for me, the natural step would have been to go to the US. But I don't really like the US. I don't like the market. I don't like the analytical side of things. And I also don't like the sports. I'm not a big, American football fan or a baseball fan. So, yeah, you need to kind of put them all into consideration. Sometimes the logic might outweigh the passion. I understand that. But yeah, that is something to consider.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And what I'm getting out of that is that individuals must try and understand what they want, not exactly what the course is offering. It's very important for them to understand where they fit in and how this course is going to be beneficial to them, rather than just trying to do it for time purpose, or maybe if it's less expensive and things like that. To get things, that's interesting. Also, a very important piece of information is that probably from the year 2021, or maybe the year after that, students who go to the United Kingdom will get an opportunity to stay back for 2 years, like post-study. In my case, it was just 6 months that I could stay back. So I had to find a job within 6 months, and I was there when Brexit was taking place. It was a tricky time anyway. So it'd be a big bonus for those who want to go abroad because they get more time to try and find themselves work over there. So that's a good thing. Transitioning into life in college, and there's always this understanding that we over here in India are more classroom oriented, more into textbooks. And at least for me personally, when I was there, my course was a lot more practical, and we had a lot more case studies. We went to clubs where we met a lot of people. We were put into situations to try and figure it out. So, talk to me about the course in Loughborough, the modules you studied, what exactly you studied, and um, how that entire experience was for you.
So we had obviously 2 semesters and a research project that we had to complete at the end of 2 semesters to finish the project, or to finish the course rather. In our first semester, we had a lot of research-oriented subjects, which I was kind of taken aback from because I didn't expect that level of research orientation. We had 2 courses relating to qualitative and quantitative study. We had an economics course that was all about research again, how to get your economic side of research right for your eventual master thesis. And we also had human resource module in that first semester, which was quite interesting because these are, I think, for the larger part of the first semester, most of these courses, would be part of a standard MBA, in my opinion. They didn't really have too much leaning towards a sports centric view on it. They just had sport examples. And that's where I felt like that was kind of a mistake by them because they didn't put enough of the sports marketing or sports media and sports journalism kind of subjects that we had in the second semester into the first, because I think that would have kind of created a bit more of a lively atmosphere within the classroom. That was one thing to keep an eye on. And in the second semester, we had a lot of sports themed subjects, and these were topics that would generate a lot more discussion because most of the people who came in to study the course were either sports fans or had developed a passion for the subjects that they were studying in the course. Um, but yeah, I think the focus was on research the first sem, and the next sem was all about the other business side of sport that we had to learn. So I think the research aspect was leaned on too far from them, from Loughborough. And that's why I want to, bring up on a point because I think in all university courses for any student, the experience is as important as the course itself, I'd say, because you learn a lot from the experience and whether you can get, volunteering opportunities, whether you can play, if you're studying a sports management, whether you can play even does help you in a way because you build up a lot of contacts. So I'd kind of distinguish between the experience and the course. And I'd say the experience was very, very constructive because from the first day that you enter Loughborough, they hit you with their sports pedigree. They tell you that they're the most successful sports uni in the world, and they even give you an insight into what you can do if you want to do any sport. If you want to work in any sport or volunteer, you could probably pursue any opportunity that you want. And I think what's different between Indian and UK universities, and I think most of the foreign universities, is that you need to go in with a bit of a game plan. I went in with an empty mind. I kind of played it day by day. But I think if you go in with a plan and say that, for example, right, they Loughborough offered FA level 1 and level 2 coaching courses for free. And if I say wanted to become a coach eventually, these courses are like quite expensive to pay for, and they hold a very, very high level of esteem when you move abroad. So I guess if you move into a game plan of, I want to get to this level of coaching and I want to get this opportunity upon graduating, Loughborough is like a perfect university for that because they give you all the opportunities that you need or even, probably dream of.
It's fitting you say that because I feel like it's true about all management degrees, right? Even if you're doing a standard MBA from any of the big colleges, right? The idea of doing the MBA is less about the coursework and more about the networking and like the pure learning. The idea is that you learn from the experiences of everyone else. Um, so it's good to hear that. I mean, it's the same at a sports management uni and things like that. They're following the same module because that seems to work for the big business schools. But so when you talk about um, you know having a plan, kind of knowing what you want to do, I feel like with a lot of people that are interested in sports management, the issue that arises is you're passionate about sports. This is my own experience as well, where you're passionate about sports and you want to pursue a career in sport, but the problems arise with understanding what the market wants, right? What kind of jobs exist, and things like that. So from my perspective, when you're saying kind of have a plan, it's difficult for me to have a plan when I'm trying to figure out what exactly the market wants and where I would fit in best. So maybe you guys can kind of help me out with like where I go in that regard, how I kind of plan out my life in case I don't know exactly what I want to do. I don't know whether I want to be a manager, or I don't know whether I want to host a podcast, or whether I want to do finance and sponsorships and budgeting for event management, things like that. So where do you think I would have to kind of go from there?
See,
I
it's
think oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll just start off. It's a conundrum that a lot of people face at the beginning, because there are people who are transitioning into the sports industry from a completely different industry, so they have no idea what they particularly want. It's just a passion that they have for sports that's allowing them to driving them forward to enter this industry. And the idea behind it is doing a sports management degree helps people to have modules of all kinds, so they get an idea of a little bit of sports finance, a little bit of sports economics, a little bit of sports marketing, and they are put into situations, and then they can decide for themselves whether they like what they are doing or not, which helps them, rather than doing a 1 year or 2 year course on, say, just sports marketing or just sports economics, and you don't have any other option per se to move into somewhere else because you haven't studied. And the internships are the best opportunities to learn, make mistakes, meet new people. It's a safe environment, and the experience counts for when you want to go in for job applications. And it was an interesting couple of job applications that I went into in England, and they liked the fact that I did sports management because they knew that I could, that I had a little bit of a background in other aspects, not just sports event management, a little bit of sports finance and marketing, like I said. So they could give me temporary shifts in the other aspects of the company as well, because I had a little bit of an understanding. So yeah, a lot of people have this problem before they start off, not knowing where they want to go into, even if they can study the market sitting at home, but they need to understand that their own comfort zone. And the best way to do that is to try and put yourself in various situations, which I think a sports management degree gives you that opportunity to explore. I'm sure Shreyas can add to that as well.
Yeah, I'll just add to that in the sense that I'm completely in the same boat as you. You know, when we start off, I think we were big fans of sport. We were willing to do anything in sport, really, open to all avenues. And we're trying to do this degree to kind of filter out what exactly we don't like or what we like, right? And I think that's where today it's a different process for me, because I only had a 6-month course per se because of coronavirus. But on the back of the course itself and my experience there, I kind of can narrow down to 2 or 3 fields that I want to work in, which is very helpful. But what I want to counter you with is that what the company is looking, what the market is looking, is for a bit of specialization, especially in certain technical fields. You know, we're talking about marketing or management or finance. I think in those fields, unless you have a very strong bachelor's background in that same field, it kind of restricts your progress further up, because you need the technical expertise or the technical background to go ahead. So that's one thing to consider, of course. But on the whole, you know, a sports management degree does give you that real life kind of, it's a reality check in terms of what exactly you want to do and what you don't want to do.
So, since you mentioned like strong bachelor's having a strong background, Shreyas and I, for listeners, both have an economics degree from Symbiosis. We both went to the same college. Arjun has a degree in commerce. He's a bachelor's, a BCom. I want to know where are actually, if there was any like transferable like skills or teachings that you got in your undergraduate degree that maybe helped you in your master's degree in sports management.
I think for me, the one big takeaway from my economics degree that helped me in my course was the background in research, because a lot of students who came out there had no clue about what research was. And we were fortunate enough to do, I think our fourth semester, we had a couple of research projects. And then, of course, we had a thesis as well. So from that standpoint, it helped to already have that basic knowledge of what research is all about, and then kind of look at what we want to do within sports for our master thesis. And that helped me a lot. And apart from that, just doing an economics degree for us, I think it gives us that opportunity to understand business much better, or decisions much better. We understand how people work, how people think, what organizations think when they make certain decisions. From that standpoint, it makes understanding certain things in sports management a lot easier. But moving on from that, I guess, is where the problem lies in that now, say, if I want to do something related to sports finance, a very concentrated role, I'm not sure I would be confident enough to go and say, I have a very good knowledge of finance and I've done a sport management, so you should give me the role. I don't have that confidence within me. So I think that's probably case by case, but that's one thing to consider as well.
Arjun?
Yeah, so for my BCom degree, I specialized in marketing. So it was helpful when I was doing the sports marketing module. When it comes to transferability of skills, from my course, I wouldn't say as much. The things that I did, say for the Department of Sports, working with them, that helped me a lot in understanding and working in different situations. So just course-wise, I wouldn't say there was that much that I could transfer. It helped me set my base, but I firmly believe that this industry is such that you need to be out and about and being networking, and that is the biggest skill that one needs to possess, which is helpful. Definitely armed with a good education background always helps, but the situation is always so fluid, right? And no matter which sector, which subsection of the industry you're in, it's all case by case by case, and it's all about problem solving wherever you are. So definitely your undergraduate degree helps you to an extent, but it's all about how you think on your feet and how you solve problems if and when they arise in these situations. So yeah.
So what I pick up from that is essentially the networking is supremely important as a skill to possess, because that is what you will put to use in your sports management degree and in any walk of life for that matter. The second thing that you guys both spoke about is work that you did in college, and I've worked very directly with Shreyas in college. Arjun, for his college, was the sports secretary. Shreyas and I worked on multiple events around sports in our college, and Shreyas always had like a very good knack for marketing events and social media marketing, which is things that I personally didn't understand. And so I feel like those experiences help us a lot in kind of understanding that this is where we want to work. The one thing I wanted to ask both of you was, because you both speak about having a strong educational background. And since both of you have done the degree, you've gone through sports management, you've both come out the other end. What would you say to someone who is thinking about sports management as an undergraduate degree? Because people offer those as well. You guys speak of a strong educational background, but someone maybe in class 11, 12 is thinking about sports management. What do you have to say to that?
I think for a bachelor's, I did see a lot of similar people who did actually take up the bachelor's in sport management at Loughborough. And I think their intentions were that, we've finished our school, we've finished up, early college life and everything, and we just want to get straight into sports. We don't want anything to do with any economics or business or commerce or whatever it is. And just speaking to a couple of them, I had the experience of that, and they wanted to go straight because of the UK's undergraduate philosophy, where you have, I think, a third or fourth year, you have an internship year. They wanted to just use this bachelor's degree as a stepping stone to getting that internship, which in turn leads them to permanent employment at that organization or whatever else. So I think a bachelor's is kind of like it's kind of a different pathway, if I may say so, because you have to be committed right from the start. You can't really change halfway and say, I don't want to do this. But at the same time, it gives you that bit more of an opportunity to kind of experience a year-long internship, which you wouldn't get with a master's degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for people who are doing a bachelor's degree in sports management, I think that's great because they found out the answer to what they want to do very early on in life. And that's always helpful because they want to pursue that. Shreyas alluded to the point that companies and organizations are looking at that little bit of technical expertise, but they also like the fact that you as an individual are sure of what you want to do. So you started off very early on this particular track, which is always helpful. Talks about the year experience also, which is very mindful. So there are pros and cons to both. If you've gone doing a different undergraduate degree and then done sports management, that's a completely different experience. You learn something more in that, and it's always helpful. But for those who start off early, it's good for them. They've entered the industry at a younger age. It's always a leg up in that regard. And yeah, they're more clear in what they want to do and their vision, which is wonderful for someone.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like
I want to also ask Shreyas with regards to campus life in Loughborough, how he thought about, because this is something that people don't really talk about, and I know it varies from person to person, but just general life in and around Loughborough, what his experience was like.
I think that's one thing that we need to stress upon a bit more. I think the experience actually counts more than what you study or what you learn, because I mean, just by being at Loughborough, the opportunities that you have just by being a part of the campus is endless, especially in sport. Loughborough is a university that prides itself on sport. They have so many teams, elite teams. They have nutrition. They have gym. They have everything that you need if you're talking about sport. So from that angle, like personally, from my experience, you can just go from one day to the next and just move on from sport to sport if you want. Or you might want to stick with one particular sport and help the university team progress. Or you might want to develop into a coach. You might want to literally from scratch, right? I have no background in football coaching, for example, and I could have become a level 2 coach, which could have probably meant that I could have taken over, a district stride out here in Bangalore. So that gives you a lot of promise, if I may say so, in terms of campus life. And obviously, I'm kind of the guy that loves sports. So wherever anything is happening around in campus, I'm always with a keen eye on it. For example, in our third or fourth day, the Wolverhampton Wolves under-23 squad came in for a friendly against the Loughborough men's team. And even within that, like 3 days in, you have an opportunity to be part of the event. So you have so many things to do out there, sport-wise, and of course, being in the UK, you can obviously go around and experience the best of sport all around the country, whether be it rugby, football, cricket, tennis, whatever. So from that standpoint, I think if you're a sports fan, you will love life at Loughborough for sure.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment as well. Even at the University of Stirling, for someone who loves sport, it was a dream. You never had any free or idle time because you could always do something. Something that I personally, and I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, complain about the problem in India is we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the facilities to play. And in that aspect, I think these colleges are amazing because they have everything that one could ask for and more. You are surrounded by people who are like-minded, who love sport as much as you do, which is always enjoyable. So it was an easy transition, easy adjustment that way. And yeah, we would get to play almost every sport. I would focus on tennis and football, but yeah, the facilities, and that's why life on campus was always fun. It was just amazing.
I also want to add on one other point that I want to mention. If you're interested in doing another technical degree, like say an MBA or a international business or economics or whatever it is, and especially I'm talking about from a Loughborough point of view, you still have that opportunity to learn a lot in sport without actually studying sport management. And that's something that I realized after the degree, because like I mentioned, you have these opportunities to do courses, to learn from people who worked in it, who are still working at the elite level. And that if you really want that solid background of education and you want to have a broader landscape in terms of job opportunities in the future, then of course you can try this out, and you can also pursue your passion for sports on the side.
Yeah, so that's very well. So that's actually pretty interesting because it's an interesting facet to look into. That we just keep thinking about sports management, just the one thing. It's not the end all and be all. a lot of other courses that one can take, which would be helpful to them. During my course, I had a compulsory module, which was this like sports internship that we had to work for 60 hours with an organization. So, did you have something similar in your course in Loughborough? And could you highlight some interesting internship opportunities that you saw, maybe some of your friends got, or what are the opportunities for a student in Loughborough?
Yeah, actually, there wasn't a particular requirement for like a guaranteed or a required course per se or an internship, like you mentioned that you had. But I did have a couple of good experiences, and I have to say, I was very gutted by the fact that COVID, came in, because I was kind of building momentum towards April and May when the English summer comes in, and there's so many opportunities to volunteer and intern at these places. But what I did have was in February, Burton Albion, which is a third division side in England, they had a position for football analyst, and this is just basically for any beginner to kind of work with their academy sides to kind of understand how it works. And I had that opportunity of attending only 2 weeks because after that, football stopped. So that was one very interesting opportunity I was looking forward to so much. I have no background in football analysis. I just love the game, and to have that opportunity within 3 or 4 months to actually have, a certified kind of, it's not a course per se, but it kind of gives you a good stead if you want to apply to any other clubs to become a performance analyst. So that was one thing to keep in mind. Another one that we actually had on campus, and this is very geocentric because netball is not played around the world, but Loughborough have a netball team that plays in the super division of the England setup. And netball is only a women's sport, by the way. So it's an all women's league. And they had this opportunity where you could work every weekend for every home game and work on the logistics side of things, be it lighting, be it spectator announcement, or whatever it is concerning logistics. So, I mean, that was a great opportunity because you were liaising with one of the best event management companies in the space, and they were giving you an opportunity to work on an event that was broadcast on Sky. So that's not something that comes around every day. So, I mean, unfortunately, it got cancelled, of course, due to COVID, but there are definitely opportunities that you can pursue.
Yeah, so that's very interesting to know that we just don't go in with a mindset of let's just stick to the sports that we love and we're going to get for opportunities. We must try and grab opportunities in any of the sports that one can get and just set the ball rolling from there. Another interesting point that I'd like to mention is the internship and then eventually the job that I got was through LinkedIn. So it wasn't exactly from college. So to all our listeners, LinkedIn is and should be your best friend once you start going to graduate school and then working, because there are tons of opportunities that just pop up on LinkedIn that people aren't going to talk about in college. And also another interesting point that both Rick and Shreyas alluded to is I didn't have as many research projects when I was in my undergraduate program, and which was a big loss because then when you come around to finally doing your dissertation for your master's, which is huge, and although we had a word limit of 10,000 words, you understand how different it is to how we do projects per se in India, in school at least, or in undergrad. It's a completely different ballgame. It was a real eye-opener for me because you have to really read a lot of papers, read a lot of articles. The entire writing style is completely different. The days of copying and pasting are not there anymore because they do plagiarism checks. So that is a very interesting learning process, and people should really try and refine the way they do their research, because it's very interesting if you get into it. You read a lot of interesting articles, interesting papers, and they give you different point of views. And yeah, so that was definitely that research project. They give you 4 months. That doesn't mean you're on holiday or you should start working or so on. They give you the 4 months time at the end of your course because you really need it to do a good job.
Anyway, guys, with that, we've come to the end of our episode. Big thanks to Shreyas for coming back on our podcast, talking about his experiences at Loughborough. Same with Arjun. Thanks for telling us about your experiences at Sterling. I'm sure this will really help students that are looking to do sports management. And actually, in India, there's so many more students that are actually thinking about it as a viable career because it is as you said at the beginning of this episode, it is a growing market in India. So I'm sure this will help a lot of people. I just want to remind everyone to kind of go follow us on our social media platforms. Check out our website, www.thinksports.co.in. Also, Shreyas has a podcast of his own. It's the Tete-a-Tete podcast. He's been doing a build up to the ISL season. So go check that out. He puts out content, like great content about the ISL. And with that, we're done for today. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.